Dear viewers, this is Shashank and you are watching HW News English. Welcome to this special live. The electoral bond scheme is back in the news. A contempt plea has been filed against the State Bank of India in the Supreme Court. This after the bank petitioned the apex court on Monday seeking an extension to the deadline or for disclosing details of electoral bonds cashed by political parties till June 30th, 2024. The Association for Democratic Reforms, ADR, which is an NGO and a petitioner in the case, in its plea alleged deliberate disobedience of the Supreme Court's judgment. ADR called the SBI application malified and a willful and deliberate defiance of the apex court's rulings. In response, the Supreme Court directed their lawyer Prashant Bhushan to put an email following which it would be listed accordingly. For those who don't know, the Supreme Court struck down the controversial electoral bond scheme as unconstitutional last month. While striking down the electoral bond scheme as unconstitutional, the Supreme Court issued the following directions. The issuing banks, that is the State Bank of India, shall stop the issuance of electoral bonds. The State Bank of India shall submit the details of electoral bonds purchased since 2019 to the Election Commission of India. The details shall include the date of purchase of each electoral bond, the name of the purchaser of the bond, and the denomination of the electoral bond purchased. The SBI shall submit the above information to the ECI within 3 weeks, that is March 6. The Election Commission shall publish the information received from the SBI on its website by March 13, 2024. Electoral bonds which are within the validity period of 15 days but which have not been encashed by the political parties yet shall be returned by the political party to the purchaser. The issuing bank shall then refund the amount to the purchaser's account. The reason why this scheme made headlines was because of its opaque nature and the fact that the ruling party, that is the Bharatiya Janata Party, got a lion's share of these anonymous donations. As per reports, the BJP got 56.5% of nearly 6,000 crore from these bonds compared to Congress, which was second at nearly 1,100 crore. To discuss more on this, we have with us the chairman, founder, member, and trustee of the Association of Democratic Reforms, Mr. Trilochan Shastri.
Hello.
Yeah, Professor Shastri, my question to you is: the SBI has said that it requires more time to compile the data, the information regarding which they need more time. So, do you think more time is required? Do you think the time is not enough that the Supreme Court has given for to compile the data?
You see, this matter is sub judice, as we say, and it is public knowledge that we have filed a contempt case. However, we respect both the Supreme Court and the State Bank of India. They are very valuable institutions of our country. And, we will let the Supreme Court decide whether what the State Bank of India has said is correct or not. I would not like to comment on it.
Okay.
But we filed
So,
a petition because I think the whole country is eager to know what that information is, as the Supreme Court has directed.
okay, Professor, do you think the SBI is acting under? Do you sense that the SBI is acting under some pressure?
I really don't know. You see, I don't have a crystal ball to find out how and why people are acting the way they are. So I really cannot comment on that.
That's okay. So the time that the SBI has asked for is till June 30th, which is
Correct.
obviously after the election results are over, if we
Correct.
anticipate. So, how crucial is it that the data becomes public knowledge before the elections? How crucial is that the data becomes public knowledge before the elections?
You see, elections is nothing new in our country, and funding of elections is nothing new. It has been going on for more than 75 years, and there is nothing wrong. Also, in fact, we welcome that political parties are funded by various citizens and also by companies. That's not at all the issue. The issue is really about transparency. The reason for transparency is worldwide. You know that the voter has a right to know who is funding our beloved political parties. So it would be good if before the elections, the voters of this country get a chance to know, you know, whether it's BJP or Congress, and we wish them both of them luck. And if the BJP as ruling party has got maximum amount of funding, I would say good for them. That's not the issue. The issue really is that the public should know who is funding whom and how much. And it would be useful before the elections for the voters to have this information.
Professor, where do you see this case going?
Nothing. See, we are getting too het up about immediate consequences. We are losing the long term perspective. The long term perspective is very clear that electoral bonds are scrapped. So no more electoral bonds will be coming. So there will be elections every 5 years. There will be assembly elections every year almost. So that will not be under the electoral bond scheme. Now, whether the government will come up with better thought out schemes which uh, you know bring about greater transparency, that I cannot speculate on. So I don't think that this is like a short term issue that we are blowing up. The long term issue is very clear that the court has said electoral bonds are banned. And of course, any step towards transparency, the entire country, including the Supreme Court, would welcome.
So, one of our viewers has asked, will stopping issuing electoral bonds bring more transparency to political funding?
It will go back to the earlier system, and whatever transparency was there will be restored. Of course, we have been always asking for more and more transparency, and there has been this. Yeah, so it will it will improve from the system that we have under electoral bonds. Yes, transparency will improve after removing electoral bonds.
Okay, what do you expect from the Supreme Court?
I really don't know. You see, we are petitioners. We had filed this petition in 2018, and
Okay.
it took the Honorable Supreme Court 6 years to give a judgment. And now we are again waiting eagerly to hear from the Supreme Court. We cannot double guess what the Supreme Court is going to say.
Okay, and if things get public, so do you think how much of this will it affect electorally? Does this benefit the common man of India? Does this information, is it necessary? Does people, lowest common denominator bothers about where the money of a political party, where the donations of this political parties comes from?
Yeah, it will benefit the voters is a very interesting question. You see, we are in the process of continuously strengthening and improving our democracy. And the bedrock of our democracy is our voters. And as voters become more aware and start taking interest, it is better for the voters and for democracy. So if there is a speculation that voters are not interested, that remains a speculation because that information has not been brought to the doors of the voters along with the consequences of such funding. If every citizen and voter in the country is informed again and again, and it slowly sinks into the national consciousness that certain people are funding political parties, certain the impact of such political funding is remains a matter of concern because we want to be very sure that the party in power, whichever party is in power, does not take policy decisions which help companies, but takes policy decisions which help the people. So the people need to be aware of it, and I think if more information is available again and again, people will definitely start seeing the link between political funding and good governance. I think that's part of the process of strengthening democracy, and we want to do that. And I think not only ADR, but about other groups, hundreds, if not thousands of groups, the media, the election commission, other people also need to reach the voters and explain to them by This is the relevance and importance of electoral of funding. So please understand it and please look at it, and then make up your mind about whom you want to vote.
But Professor, isn't it true that a lot of political funding happens through cash? So how will it make the process more transparent? Because what I think that after this, the opposition parties would actually face the consequence, because those who are funding would stop, because once it was anonymous, they used to fund for opposition as well, people who are funding. But once it becomes public, don't you think that those will only go to the ruling party and not to opposition, and this is going to be somewhat not going to stop? The means would change.
I think we are making too much of all this. You see, the current government has been in power for nearly 10 years. Before that, another government, another ruling party was in power for 10 years. At that time, also, the same issues were there. So nothing has changed. As I said, India is not a new democracy, it is 75 years old. It is only a small 6 year period during which we had electoral bonds and we are removing it. So, whatever system was there earlier, whatever pluses and minuses were there, that will continue now. The issue of uh, all the issues that you have raised, we have dealt with it successfully in the past as a nation, and we will continue to deal with it. Who is going to fund whom? Who is afraid of this, that, and all? These are all speculations. It used to happen earlier, and it will continue to happen.
Yeah, if we speak about the electoral bonds, it is applicable. It is there in place since a long time now. So what? Why did it take Supreme? Don't you think it took a lot of time for the Supreme Court to take this decision?
I don't know. See, we cannot really speculate on why the Supreme Court. You see, the current Chief Justice, he took up the matter and got it listed. Earlier, maybe the Supreme Court was very busy with other cases. I have no idea why it took them so long. And by the way, 6 years is long from one point of view, but in 75 years of democracy, 6 years is not very long.
Okay. So thank you, Professor, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining in. So viewers, this was Professor. Yeah. So viewers, thank you for joining in this live session. This was yeah. So we are going to keep you posted. For that, you have to subscribe to HW News English. If you wish to support us, please download a new app. It's called News Shorts. Download the app and stay updated on current affairs in minutes.